5, we're early, right. We need to be able to see this bit here, water for quenching. Pickle pot is in shot, not in focus, but it's in there. Boom, there we go. Okay guys, welcome back to Roberts & Co. Welcome back to London. Another live jewellery making session. Today I've just finished peening these silver ingots. I've been working on these for a while, but I took a break from this project to do the other projects. Making wire. I haven't made any progress since what did we do to these yesterday? We annealed them. Do you know what? I don't know what stage they're. Oh, they're annealed, I think. Yeah, they're ready to go through draw plates, and then they'll need annealing again. So anyway, let's not get sidetracked on other projects. We're working on these. These are ultimately going to become some more of this, which is 2 by 1 mil D-shape, 50% profile D-shape wire. I need a lot of this at the moment. So that, well, a couple of these are going to become that, and a couple will probably become caught, either 2 mil or 3 mil. Give you a little close up of these. I actually had to remelt these. These were, where's the 1 mil wire? That is 9 carat yellow gold 1 mil wire. I actually I poured a gold ingot at the same time as I was pouring these. These went wrong, they had to be redone. They weren't really cracking, but they weren't not cracking. They had like this weird oxide coming out of them. I don't know what I did to them, but they had this black oxide developing, which I've never seen before. What I'm doing with these at the minute is they were poured. These are actually on their 3rd round of peening. So they were poured, and then what I do with them, which I do with all the ingots, I don't know if you can see like the sort of hammer blows in them. The hammer's here. It's a process called peening. So I get the steel bench block, you get the ingot, and it is just, I'm not going to do on this because I'll destroy all the things, but it is just a series of very deliberate hammer blows, harder than that, but it is just that. I'll do one plain and then you get the idea. That's peening. Just a series of small hammer blows, heavy hammer blows, but small. This is a crossing hammer, so just, yeah, a series of blows up and down that. And the theory is it reduces the potential, it work hardens the surface, I think, more than the interior of the metal, and it prevents the likelihood of the ingot cracking in the next process, which is going through the roller mills. There's virtually there's a little bit of information available online about the peening process. It's not detailed by any stretch of the imagination. There's actually, in the grand scheme of things, virtually none. Well, let's go with very little. There's very little in the way of actual, like the detailed metallurgy, or you know, of doing this, of the peening process. And in fact, if you watch most people talking about it, or read most people writing about it, in most jewelry making books, it's completely omitted. And if you ever see people talking about it, you know, jewelry tutors and whatever, they don't do it, and they suggest that it's unnecessary and that it's a process that can be skipped. I disagree. I think it's for us, it's helped significantly reduce and for gold pretty much eliminate cracking and to some extent porosity. But what I don't really know at this stage is how much peening is required, but I think it's probably more than you'd imagine and more than we're doing. And what I'm trying to do with these ingots is when they're poured, they're kind of rounded to some extent, certainly on the top, on the open side of the ingot when it's poured, but the edges tend to be sort of round. I tell you what it comes out like a sort of loaf of bread from the baker's, you know, where even if you go and get the square one, it's got rounded edges and rounded ends. Even this, you know, even the square rectangular, if you go and get a loaf of bread from the baker's, it's kind of rounded off. That's what they're like. And what I'm trying to do with the peening process on these ones, on this batch of them, and see if this helps. Because if it's good, quite often, if the metal's gonna crack, And I don't know if this is because of the peening or not. When it goes through the rolling mills, they're not square like that. They're octagonal. So there's almost like a little but the octagonal edges are much smaller than the main square edges. But when the cracking or porosity tends to materialise, if it is going to, it tends to be on those smaller edges, which are the ones which are the edges of this. So the way I'll put that through the rolling mill is with the actual corners, if you like, of the ingots go through those small squared off octagonal edges, and that is or appears to be where the cracking, if it's going to appear, appears. And I'm wondering if that's because if I'm not peening them enough, those rounded edges are not getting smacked with the hammer. Like if I was to stop now, there are some areas of this which haven't been really significantly peened because they are those rounded edges. You know, it's doing the large major flat surfaces, but then these corners are not getting done. I mean, what I could actually do is I think I may somewhere have, I think the swage blocks, there is a swage block here somewhere. But I think if you get, I've got somewhere a small square swage block which I might dig out, and on the small square version of these swage blocks, there is a V in it. I often wonder what that was for, but now I come to think of it, that could actually be quite useful. That could allow us, if I put it in, I've got the V block here as well, but this is a bit too deep. But there is a small square version. I've got one somewhere. I don't know where. But yeah, I know the small square one has got half rounds in it, but it's also got V grooves in it, much like that. So, and it's shallow. It's as shallow as that. I don't know what size they are, but because obviously the hammer's not going to go in there. It's going to bottom out on that. But with the small square one, so what I might attempt to do is find that wherever that is, our small square swage block. I've got it with some tooling. Like it came with like round tooling. I don't know what that was one of those things, like my mini rolling mill. Looked cool. I had to have it. Never used it. But I've got an engine turning machine that you could apply that to. Cool looking tools that you never use. Must haves. Just because they look cool, not because you use them. But yeah, somewhere I've got a V block. But what I might attempt to try that, and actually then I'll be able to peen these corners, because that is always when you get, not, I don't want to say always, most of the time if you're going to get cracking, that's where you're getting. Right, anyway, these are on their third wave of peening, and I need to now anneal them, quench them in the water, pickle them, and then they're going to need some more. What I'm going to do with these, I think, is line them up this way. We'll do them one at a time. Speed. So we start with the biggest one. I'll use 2 torches for this. Use the micro welder, then we'll each one, if I do one, can then move on to the next one, and there'll be the residual heat from the previous one. Genius. But yeah, anyway, the key point of all that was there's so little information once you get to this stage of jewellery making. And what I mean by this stage as well is this stage of handmade. Like there's probably quite a lot of information, detailed technical specs by the German manufacturers, like the induction casting machinery. They will probably have, because they're doing this in a controlled atmosphere. So, and bullion dealer wire and sheet is phenomenal stuff. I mean, we'll use the same bullion dealer whether we're buying grain, sheet or wire, pre-made sheet, pre-made wire, and their stuff's fantastic, but it's expensive. And plus, it's not just that it's expensive. There's some wire, some shape, like they don't do court-shaped wire, so we have to make some wire. We could adapt round wire, but we've got, I've got all this. It's something we need to perfect in-house anyway, so that we've got more control, and it's just a nice thing to have the stuff entirely handmade in-house here in London. It's a feature, but also we get like this is sheet from a bullion dealer, and again, It's the same bullion dealer whether we were buying just raw silver, pure silver, recycled silver. This is grain. We'll get it from the same responsibly sourced suppliers, 100% recycled in most instances. And but yeah, we'll often buy sheet and some wire, but the two, you know, like we could buy D-shaped wire that's 2.3 by 1.5 and adapt it to 2 by 1. But if we're going to do that, we might as well just make it ourselves. And it's more economic. Well, financially, it's more economical to make your own. Time-wise, it's definitely not. It would be cheaper. It would be more cost effective for me to go and get a minimum wage job and use the money I've earned from that to buy the wire than make my own wire at this point. And the amount of gear I've had to buy, yeah, it's not it's probably not economically viable to make it ourselves. It like the headline figures when you see the price of grain and then you see the price of pre-made sheet of wire. It is the price. There's a spread. That's how bullion dealers make their money. But by the time I've peened these, like these will take these, turning these from sterling silver, melting it down, turning it into ingots, and then putting it into white is hours and hours of work. I'm starting to rethink my career now. Right, anyway, we need to get these up to a dull red. Get them up to a dull red, hold them there for a bit, make sure they're nice and soft, and then I let them go off the boil a little bit, cool down a bit, so that when I quench them, they're not red hot. Because what I've also had an issue with, which I had an issue with the last lot, with these hand-poured ingots, you definitely end up, it might not be visible porosity, you can end up with visible porosity, but there's definitely an issue with them being slightly porous. We're not talking like precious metal clay porous, but there's definitely something going on with porosity. And it's worse if you don't peen them, especially silver. Gold's not so bad, but with the silver, what I've found is because of the porosity, if you quench them when they're red hot, when you put them back through the rolling mills, you end up, to say it's like wringing out a sponge would be a big exaggeration, but you get little beads of water, or worse if they've been in the pickle, it's pickle. But yeah, you're getting, you'll notice that you're effectively wringing water out of them. Again, zero information about that anywhere. You heard it here first. But you know, it can't be just me that's happening to. In fact, I know it's not just me because I've seen the state of it sort of creates like a sort of coppery pattern on the rolling mills temporarily. Yeah, obviously it's not good for the rolling mills having wringing out your sponge-like ingots, and that is the reason why I remelted these. Is because it was actually quite bad on the last batch. I don't know what I did with them, but yeah, every time I put them through the rolling mills, I was having to wipe them off, and it didn't diminish. That was the thing. It wasn't with the last batch I was doing. It didn't seem to be. It wasn't getting worse, but it wasn't diminishing as they compressed down, and I was getting this weird black silver oxide coming out of them. You'd think with all these universities for many years now offering degrees in jewellery making, they would have, there would be information on all of this stuff, but there's not. but they do produce some phenomenal looking pictures of jewellery. Computer aided, of course. Right, they look about the right sort of colour we're looking for. Then I'll let that, let's get that first one right up. Nice and hot. I'm going to let it cool down a bit then. That'll be ready to quench, and then we'll move sequentially up these. Yeah, I've got a feeling, a suspicion that quenching them now when they're red hot, especially this silver, is I don't know whether it's the root cause, but it's definitely not helping with the ingots taking on board water. Right, let's quench that first one. Probably could have gone in there hotter, but you know. In fact, I'm going to quench this one. Looks good to go. These boards take on a bit of the heat, so that's why I just moved that one down, because the board will be hot there. So it just takes slightly less energy on a pre-warmed part of the board. Right, I'll let that one cool off. Make that bottom one cool off. Just keep this top one hot for a little bit longer. When I'm peening these as well, it seems to, the metal, I did measure it in a previous video, and the metal seems to move like a sort of a uniform, almost a uniform amount in millimeters. I think it was about 0.4, it was around 0.4 mil. So I'd peen it, and the ingot would reduce in thickness about 0.4 mil, and obviously extend in length slightly. But I would have thought that it would have been sort of like a percentage. It would have been more of a percentage thing, like the ingot would, but it's not. It seems to reduce about 0.4 and then you do it again, and it would go about 0.4 again and again and again. You know, whether it was 7 mil, 6 mil, 5 mil, the metal seemed to move a sort of fairly uniform amount in millimeters rather than a sort of percentage of the the overall size of the ingot. Right, let's let that cool down a bit. Turn the microwave off. These will sit in the pickle probably for about half an hour. It's cold pickle. Well, the heat of these might warm it up a touch, but I was going to turn the light on then, but if I do, we won't be able to see that. Go back to, I was going to say room temperature, but it's not room temperature, it's still red hot. It's just not red hot, literally. I think that'll do. Yeah, also where the if you don't get rid of their porosity, where it takes on the water, what you can end up with is you can end up with it on a quite a large scale or on a really small scale. Is you end up with these little black spots, which is obviously tarnish, silver oxide, where the water sort of leaches to the surface. So it's something I've got to iron out. And I'm hoping getting them peened to the point where they're squared off, and possibly I'll try and find the swage block with V grooves, shallower V grooves, and this machine block, and we can then peen off the corners too. Right, that is annealing silver ingots. See you in the next one. Toodles.